can be said to administer its intelligence referentially. This sense of reference is done through an image of self. In other words, if your body is a vehicle, the image. We wouldn't be defining by the form. It's kind of like we're space that is aware of itself, and parts of what it's aware of itself in the moment is materialistic, it's objects. That means pretty much every human being that enters the system of life requires a certain cultivation of ability in handling objects, but also to be able to not get possessed by language, by subjects, and to be able to observe subjects. So the same way you observe people, like when you meet someone, you don't, it's like, the person doesn't think they're them. But sometimes when people get a new thought or a new idea, they think they are that idea, you know? And so it's a strange way of becoming an observer of no longer just our physical faculties or body, but our percentage of what is happening to you is external, what percentage is internal. Happiness, emotions, they relate to one's inner realm. And they often arise when how can I say it? It's like a bunch of landscapes are layered together. In front of your eyes, things have to occur, or not have to, but they occur linearly. Behind, it's fascinating. Human society and civilization is not a purely rational place. Due to the inner realms of people differing from their outer realms, it means kinda human beings each are living in different worlds considering their own viewpoint. So this is the cool thing about the inner realms, that once you realize nobody has your eyes, you first calm down from the mindset that the external world owes your inner realm something. That mentality of no longer having a resistance of the external realm, having to constantly follow the inner realm and the external realm, there's a relaxation. There's the Tilopa, this Tibetan Buddhist sage, says something like, let me find the quote for you. He makes a very valuable point in mystical practice that many mystics even uh, it's in their blind spot. Okay, there we go. So the quote from Tilopa, this Buddhist sage, I mean, he has a bunch of quotes. One quote he says, and at its roots and rest in naked awareness. He says, Tilopa says, let go of what has passed. Let go of what may come. Let go of what is happening now. Don't try to figure anything out. Don't try to make anything happen. Relax right now and rest. He says, don't recall, don't imagine, don't think, don't examine, don't control, rest. He says, it is not the outer objects that entangle us, it is the inner clinging that entangles us. And that's pretty much kind of home run, guys. Really, the notion is, think of it this way: imagination was virtual reality before we made virtual reality. You know, I find it sometimes fascinating. Sometimes I'm in a movie theater and I'm seeing a film, and there's some part of that film that reminds me of another scene in another film. So these quotes from Tilopa are implying that the human being must rest. You must rest. It's like you can't search for truth 24/7. No person can be artificial 24/7. Their energy levels will at some point diminish throughout the day, and when it diminishes, they can't have the same intensity of keeping the artificial aspects of self alive. So ultimately, the mystics were like, okay, our eyes have opened in a world. We have no idea where this is, but it also seems to be an inner realm. When they wondered about the inner realm, they ultimately accessed it through stillness and silence. I say there are two gates outside of dualism. The vanishing point out of the dualistic realm is emptiness and infinity. That means either you can see a sort of infinite progression or you can see an infinite regression towards the void. This is why suddenly resting after doing an activity is like acknowledging the void that is observing the duality. So, pretty much in a very dynamic system, which life appears to be, the moment the being is still, they become more aware of the movement, therefore, their intelligence comes across as a field of intelligence. It's so fascinating. I thought about it, hold my hand in a certain way and I talk, and if I move my hand as I'm talking, does that change a certain percentage of the neurochemistry, which totally makes the talk totally different? The biggest sort of mystical clue I feel I got was that the concept of self was arbitrary. People define their self, their sense of self. People identify with various things. And especially in our modern world now, that identification is expanding in regard to its scale and possibility. What does that mean? That means we are moving into an era where we thought we were just objects, but then it's like our attention was on objects, then it went on subjects. So first we were kind of getting acquainted with material existence. Now, after material existence stabilized, it's as if the subjective, the immaterial existence, which is another word for experience. Nature of your experience. It's like we are in such an empty room. This was one of the hardest things for me. And somebody who had knocked on the door, you opened the door and you saw it was your worst and your greatest self standing beside one another. In other words, the archetype of your most inefficient self and the archetype of your most efficient self. Degrees between linear perceptions. So what does that mean? That means in my childhood, I didn't do something, okay? When I grew up, I did it, you know? And then when I think about that experience, the overall emotion that is left is as if there was a reference of not, a reference of absence, then a reference of presence. So I noticed that if we begin very playfully, like advanced communicators as a species, studying our minds and begin associating uh, ingenious way dimensions to our psychology and to find the universal rhythms of this. That means what I mean by that is, like, for example, outside in front of your eyes, there's laws. There's the laws of nature. Okay, like when you drop an object, gravity is there. But internally, I don't feel there are laws that are constant. They are there are there are not laws that can turn into constants, but you can say there is rhythmic abidance. When the surfer is on the wave, it is going by the law of the nature of how the wave is being expressed. For me, something incredible was that I realized I am not living on a rock. I am in a symbiosis with the known and the unknown. And the unknown is a space of opportunity. That means that the ability for a human being to get stressed even about their future is a great achievement. Do you know there were human beings dwelling the earth that they were already in the here and now. Everybody started from the here and now, you know? And it's that they began projecting time, attributing symbols. So that means the same way the human being put on clothing, the mind put on language, and now identities are present in the linguistic simulation. We have become creatures of language. When I looked at mystical practices in regards to a sort of spiritual angle, I kind of noticed that they're all going towards a sort of detachment. Spirituality is another way of saying the traditional spirituality was a way of detaching from the suffering of this world. Like that's why people even went towards spirituality, to detach the suffering of their world through the comprehension of its greater levels. But in our current modernity, archetypes are growing way differently than they were growing in ancient times. And so, if in ancient times they went towards silence, and now I find myself in a civilization in 2020 that is, in some sense, language oriented, I find that the greater enlightenment of modern civilization is by acknowledging the silence or obtaining a greater ability to communicate. So I feel if somebody asks that man has limitations is a good thing. If he was limitless, there would be no story. It's like, why does an eternal being need to survive? Why does an eternal transmigrating soul of the unknown in Buddhist thought need to reincarnate? Why? Why does eternity need to play the game of shapes temporarily? So if that mode of thought was entertained, it would mean that ultimately when any human being speaks, their speech is originating from an axis that is placed in the void. That means the center of the universe is hollow. The center of the universe. It is hollow as a permission for the singular to extend. It's like right currently just the fact that if there's 0.0 whatever amount of zeros you want, 1% chance that this world of ours is multidimensional. It means all the sciences and all the theories that we have developed in accordance to the truths of experience in one dimension are not the full picture. When it comes to language and subjectivity, experience draws existence into meaning. Experience, because of its instantaneous presence and energy not being able to be created and destroyed, and life appearing as some sort of conscious energy, it's as if experience is awareness, and existence is the self. And it's a relationship of attention, oscillating between feeling it's just the matter in the space, or feeling it's the space that is the whole matter. If you had a dream, just pay attention to this. Like in a dream, your physical body is inactive. Life and movement. When we dream, the physical body is inactive. That sense of self in that dream world, during the dream, that sense of self is an experience of mind projecting body. But when we wake up throughout the day, it's an experience of body projecting mind. This means that we're either oscillating between two dimensions, knowledge is like being able to see the candle flame. The unknown is how the candle flame's movement cannot be linearized. It's the presence of the living being that is the greatest evidence of unknown phenomena being aware of itself in a known way. In other words, our whole moment of being is the door to cosmic awareness. And that's the thing. I can understand sincerity, like, blind sincerity still being a good effort. But what I can't comprehend is, what is our civilization going to do when in the future, for example, they connect people's heads to computers, imagine. And then first we got to wonder, for the first time, four different people have the same mind. That would mean a kind of new era in philosophy. It would mean self, um, it would mean the transcendence of individuality beyond whatever that individuality has access to. Why is imagination here? Because reality has to go somewhere. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope this talk was helpful. Much blessings and namaste.